In the dense jungles of Vietnam, where the canopy was so thick that noon felt like twilight, there existed a ghost. Not the kind that haunts old houses or abandoned battlefields, but something far more terrifying. A living phantom who could put a bullet through a man's heart from over 1,000 yards away, then vanish into the green hell as if he had never existed at all. This ghost had a name, though few who heard it lived to repeat it. The Americans called him White Feather, after the single eagle plume he wore in his boonie hat. But to the North Vietnamese army, he was simply known as the one they could never find. The year was 1966, and the Vietnam War was escalating into something far beyond what anyone had anticipated. American forces were pouring into Southeast Asia by the hundreds of thousands, bringing with them the most advanced military technology the world had ever seen. Helicopters that could deliver entire companies into remote landing zones. Artillery that could level entire grid squares with surgical precision. Air support that could turn day into night with napalm and high explosives. Yet for all this technological superiority, there was one weapon that proved more valuable than any piece of machinery. The human eye behind a rifle scope, the steady hand that could reach out and touch someone from distances that seemed impossible. Carlos Norman Hathcock II had arrived in Vietnam with the reputation of being one of the finest marksmen the Marine Corps had ever produced. Standing 6 feet tall with sandy brown hair and piercing blue eyes, he looked like the kind of farm boy who could shoot the wings off a fly at 100 yards. Which, as it turned out, wasn't far from the truth. Before the war, Hathcock had dominated competitive shooting circuits across the United States, setting records that stood for decades. At the Wimbledon Cup, the most prestigious long-range shooting competition in America, he had placed shots so precisely that other competitors would stop their own firing just to watch him work. But competitive shooting, no matter how precise, bears little resemblance to the deadly chess game of military sniping. On a range, targets don't shoot back. They don't move. They don't think. They don't hunt you while you're hunting them. In Vietnam, Hathcock would discover that being the best marksman in peacetime meant nothing if you couldn't adapt to the psychological warfare of killing other human beings who were trying just as hard to kill you. The 1st Battalion, 26th Marines, had established their base of operations at Hill 55, a strategic position that overlooked the approaches to Da Nang Air Base. From this elevated position, Marine snipers could observe the surrounding countryside for miles in every direction, identifying enemy movement and engaging high-value targets before they could threaten American installations. It was here that Hathcock would begin his transformation from competition shooter to something far more dangerous. His first confirmed kill came on his 3rd day in country. A North Vietnamese officer had been spotted through binoculars, moving between positions approximately 800 yards from the Marine perimeter. The shot itself was routine by Hathcock standards. A gentle squeeze of the trigger on his Winchester Model 70, chambered in .30-06 Springfield. The bullet took less than a second to travel the distance, striking the enemy officer center mass and dropping him instantly. What wasn't routine was the effect that first kill had on Hathcock himself. Years later, he would describe the moment as a fundamental shift in his understanding of warfare. This wasn't about marksmanship anymore. This wasn't about precision or technique or breathing control. This was about taking another human being's life from such a distance that you could see their face clearly through your scope. You could watch them fall. You could see the exact moment when life left their body. And then you had to live with that image for the rest of your life. But Hathcock adapted faster than anyone expected. Within his first month in Vietnam, he had established himself as the most effective sniper in his unit. His confirmed kill count was climbing steadily, but more importantly, his presence was beginning to have a psychological effect on enemy forces. North Vietnamese units would alter their patrol routes to avoid areas where the White Feather sniper was known to operate. Supply convoys would wait for darkness before moving through certain sectors. Officers would remove their rank insignia and try to blend in with enlisted personnel to avoid being targeted by the ghost who seemed to see everything. The North Vietnamese army response was swift and decisive. If they couldn't find this phantom sniper through conventional means, they would create specialized hunter teams whose only mission was to track him down and eliminate him. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were skilled marksmen in their own right, trained in camouflage, tracking, and the art of patience that separated snipers from regular infantry. They knew that somewhere in the jungle, a Marine with a white feather in his hat was watching and waiting. Their job was to find him before he found them. The cat-and-mouse game that followed would become the stuff of military legend. Hathcock would establish a position before dawn, spending hours crawling through undergrowth so thick that he could barely see 3 feet in front of him. He would select vantage points that offered excellent fields of fire while remaining completely concealed from enemy observation. Then he would wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for entire days, watching through his scope for any sign of enemy movement, while remaining perfectly still in temperatures that regularly exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The psychological pressure was immense. Hathcock knew that enemy counter-snipers were actively hunting him. Every shadow could conceal a rifle barrel. Every rustle in the vegetation could signal an enemy marksman adjusting his position for a killing shot. The knowledge that someone was trying to kill you while you were trying to kill them created a level of stress that few human beings ever experience. It required a kind of mental discipline that went far beyond anything taught in military training. But Hathcock had advantages that his enemies couldn't match. His rifle, the Winchester Model 70, was a precision instrument that had been carefully modified for long-range accuracy. The scope was a uninertal 8-power that allowed him to identify targets at distances where they couldn't even see him. More importantly, he had developed an almost supernatural understanding of ballistics, wind drift, and the dozens of variables that affect bullet trajectory over extreme distances. He could estimate range by eye with an accuracy that amazed even veteran Marines. He could read wind patterns in grass movement and compensate for the effects of humidity on bullet flight. The first serious attempt to eliminate Hathcock came in the form of a North Vietnamese sniper known only as the Cobra. Intelligence reports suggested that this individual was responsible for killing at least a dozen American personnel, including several officers and NCOs who had been specifically targeted for their leadership roles. The Cobra used a Soviet Mosin Nagant rifle with a scope of unknown manufacture, and his confirmed kills demonstrated a level of skill that approached Hathcock's own abilities. The hunt for the Cobra began when Marine patrols started reporting the distinctive crack of a high-powered rifle from the same general area over the course of several days. Each shot had resulted in an American casualty, and the pattern suggested that the enemy sniper was operating from a fixed position somewhere in the dense jungle northwest of Hill 55. Hathcock volunteered to track down and eliminate this threat, knowing that it would mean entering enemy-controlled territory with minimal support and maximum risk. The stalk took 3 days. Moving primarily at night to avoid enemy patrols, Hathcock worked his way through terrain that seemed designed to kill anyone foolish enough to enter it. Razor-sharp elephant grass that could slice exposed skin to ribbons. Streams contaminated with bacteria that could cause dysentery or worse. Insects that carried diseases with names most people had never heard of. And always, the knowledge that somewhere ahead, an enemy marksman was waiting with his own rifle and his own lethal skills. On the morning of the 3rd day, Hathcock found what he was looking for. Through his scope, he could see the glint of sunlight reflecting off glass approximately 600 yards away. It was the kind of reflection that could only come from a rifle scope or binoculars. The enemy sniper had made the most basic mistake in the sniper's handbook. He had allowed his optics to catch the light, revealing his position to anyone with the knowledge to recognize what they were seeing. The shot that followed would become one of the most famous in military history. Hathcock's bullet traveled the 600 yards in less than a second, striking the enemy sniper's scope and traveling directly through the optical tube into the man's eye. It was a shot that required not just exceptional marksmanship, but an understanding of angles and trajectories that bordered on the supernatural. The enemy sniper died instantly, his own rifle unfired. But when Hathcock reached the position to confirm the kill, he discovered something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The dead man was younger than he had expected, probably no more than 20 years old. A kid, really, who had been trained to kill Americans with the same precision and dedication that Hathcock brought to killing North Vietnamese. The enemy sniper's rifle was well maintained and showed signs of extensive use. This wasn't some amateur who had gotten lucky. This was a skilled marksman who had simply made one fatal mistake. The psychological impact of that kill was profound. Hathcock realized that he wasn't just fighting an enemy army. He was fighting other snipers who were just as dedicated, just as skilled, and just as determined to survive as he was. The war had become personal in a way that went far beyond politics or national objectives. It was now a contest between individual marksmen, each trying to eliminate the other before being eliminated themselves. Word of the Cobra's death spread quickly through both American and North Vietnamese forces. For the Marines, it was proof that their ghost sniper was more than just propaganda. He was a real person with real skills who could reach out and touch enemy marksmen at distances that seemed impossible. For the North Vietnamese, it was a challenge that demanded an even more serious response. The response came in the form of a woman whose reputation preceded her like the whisper of death itself. Intelligence reports began filtering back to American forces, describing an enemy sniper unlike any they had previously encountered. She was known by various names depending on which unit reported contact with her. Some called her the Ghost of the Mekong. Others referred to her simply as Apache, after her reported preference for leaving wounded Americans alive, so their screams would demoralize nearby troops. But most often, she was called Nguyen Thi Duong, though whether this was her real name or simply another layer of psychological warfare remained unknown. What made Apache different wasn't just her gender, though female snipers were extraordinarily rare in the North Vietnamese army. It was her methodology. Where most snipers focused on quick, clean kills that eliminated targets efficiently, Apache seemed to take pleasure in inflicting maximum psychological damage on American forces. She would wound rather than kill when the tactical situation allowed it. She would target medics who came to help the wounded. She would fire single shots into American positions during quiet periods, keeping entire units awake and on edge for days at a time. The stories that filtered back through intelligence channels painted a picture of someone who understood warfare on a level that transcended mere marksmanship. Apache didn't just kill American personnel. She terrorized them. Units that operated in her area of operations reported significantly higher rates of combat stress casualties. Men would refuse to leave their bunkers during daylight hours. Patrols would abort their missions at the first sound of rifle fire, even when it came from friendly forces conducting training exercises. Marine Corps intelligence estimated that Apache was responsible for at least 30 American casualties, though the actual number was likely much higher. Many incidents that appeared to be random sniper fire were probably her work, but without witnesses or distinctive ballistic evidence, confirmation remained impossible. What was certain was that her presence was having an effect on American operations that went far beyond the tactical impact of her individual kills. The psychological warfare extended beyond the battlefield itself. Apache had developed a signature that made her kills instantly recognizable. She would place a small piece of bamboo inscribed with Vietnamese characters next to the bodies of her victims. Translated, These messages contained personal information about the dead soldiers that she couldn't possibly have known through conventional intelligence gathering. Details about their families back home, their girlfriends' names, their fears and hopes and dreams that they had shared only in private letters. This intelligence breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A North Vietnamese defector who had served as a radio operator in Apache's support unit revealed that she had access to intercepted American mail. The enemy had been systematically capturing and reading correspondence between American soldiers and their families, then using this information to create psychological profiles of potential targets. Apache would study these profiles before conducting her hunts, learning everything possible about the men she intended to kill. The revelation transformed the hunt for Apache from a simple counter-sniper operation into something far more personal. She wasn't just killing American soldiers. She was violating their privacy, their humanity, their connection to home and family. The bamboo messages weren't random taunts. They were carefully crafted psychological weapons designed to break the morale of survivors who would find the bodies and read the impossible personal details. Hathcock's commanding officer called him into the command bunker on a sweltering Tuesday morning in late August. The briefing was classified at a level that required everyone present to sign additional security documents. The mission parameters were unlike anything Hathcock had previously encountered. He wasn't being asked to eliminate a military target. He was being asked to hunt another hunter who had made the war personal for every American serving in Vietnam. The intelligence package on Apache was surprisingly thin considering her reputation. Estimated age between 25 and 35. Height approximately 5 feet 4 inches. Weight unknown but described as slight build. Preferred weapon believed to be a Soviet Dragunov sniper rifle, though this was unconfirmed. Operating area covered roughly 50 square miles of jungle northwest of Da Nang. Most importantly, she had never been photographed, captured, or even clearly observed by American forces. She was as much a ghost as Hathcock himself. The tactical challenge was immense. Apache operated in terrain that she knew intimately, supported by local infrastructure that could provide her with intelligence, supplies, and safe houses. She had the advantage of fighting on her home ground against an enemy whose every movement could be observed and reported back to her handlers. Most significantly, she had proven capable of avoiding detection by multiple American units that had been specifically tasked with finding her. Hathcock's approach would require abandoning many of the tactics that had made him successful against conventional targets. Instead of establishing fixed positions and waiting for enemies to appear, he would need to become a tracker, following Apache's trail through jungle terrain, where a single misplaced footstep could reveal his presence to enemy observers. He would be operating alone, without the radio support or extraction options that provided safety nets for most sniper operations. The hunt began with a careful analysis of Apache's previous kills. Hathcock studied maps, weather reports, and terrain features to identify patterns in her target selection. He discovered that she preferred to operate during the transition periods between day and night, when changing light conditions made detection more difficult. She favored positions that offered multiple escape routes, never remaining in the same location for more than a few hours. Most importantly, she seemed to have an intuitive understanding of how American forces would respond to her attacks, positioning herself to exploit their predictable tactical reactions. The first week of the hunt produced nothing but frustration. Hathcock would identify a likely position based on his analysis, spend hours moving into surveillance range, only to find empty jungle where Apache should have been. She was always one step ahead, always somewhere else, always invisible. The psychological pressure was unlike anything he had experienced during his previous operations. Hunting the Cobra had been a chess match between skilled opponents. Hunting Apache felt like trying to catch smoke with his bare hands. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A Marine patrol had reported finding unusual scratches on tree bark in an area where Apache was suspected to have operated. The scratches were too regular to be natural, too purposeful to be accidental. When Hathcock examined photographs of these markings, he recognized them as range markers. Apache was using trees to measure distances to potential target areas, carving small notches that would be invisible to casual observation but would provide precise ranging information during future operations. This discovery revealed a fundamental aspect of Apache's methodology that intelligence analysts had missed. She wasn't improvising her shots based on targets of opportunity. She was pre-planning her kills with the same systematic precision that American snipers used when establishing defensive positions. The range markers meant that she was creating detailed firing solutions for specific locations, then waiting for American personnel to move into her predetermined kill zones. Armed with this insight, Hathcock began looking for other signs of Apache's preparation methods. He found them everywhere once he knew what to look for. Disturbed vegetation that marked concealed observation posts, subtle modifications to natural camouflage that created better fields of fire. Most tellingly, he found evidence of a sophisticated logistics network that kept Apache supplied with ammunition, food, and intelligence, while she operated in areas that American forces considered secure. The realization that Apache was operating with extensive support fundamentally changed Hathcock's tactical approach. He wasn't hunting a lone sniper who relied on individual skill and luck. He was hunting the focal point of an entire enemy intelligence and support operation that had been specifically designed to eliminate American personnel through precision marksmanship and psychological warfare. The stakes had escalated beyond a simple duel between opposing marksmen. Apache represented a new form of warfare that combined traditional sniper tactics with sophisticated intelligence gathering and psychological operations. If she succeeded in her mission to terrorize American forces, it could serve as a model for similar operations throughout Vietnam. The war itself could be transformed into a series of individual hunting contests where skilled enemy marksmen would systematically eliminate American leadership and demoralize entire units. Hathcock realized that defeating Apache would require more than superior marksmanship. It would require outsmarting an enemy who had proven capable of anticipating American tactical responses and turning them to her advantage. The hunt had become a contest of minds as much as a contest of shooting skills, with the outcome potentially affecting the broader conduct of the war itself. The solution came to Hathcock in the form of a tactical reversal that would have impressed Sun Tzu himself. Instead of hunting Apache directly, he would force her to hunt him. The plan was audacious in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Hathcock would make himself visible to enemy observers, creating an irresistible target that Apache couldn't ignore. When she moved to eliminate what appeared to be a careless American sniper, he would be waiting for her. The psychological dimensions of this strategy were staggering. Hathcock would be deliberately exposing himself to enemy fire from a marksman whose skills approached his own. One miscalculation, one moment of inattention, one slight error in positioning, and he would become another casualty statistic in Apache's growing list of confirmed kills. The margin for error was so narrow that it existed more in theory than in practice. But Hathcock had identified a weakness in Apache's operational methodology that could be exploited. Her previous kills demonstrated a pattern of target selection that favored American personnel who appeared to be isolated or vulnerable. She preferred shots that offered high probability of success with minimal risk of immediate retaliation. By presenting himself as an apparently easy target, Hathcock could manipulate her into revealing her position for the split second necessary to return fire. The bait position was established on a ridgeline that offered excellent observation of the valley below, while remaining exposed to enemy fire from multiple directions. Hathcock arranged his equipment to create the visual signature of a sniper position that had been hastily established by someone with limited field experience. His rifle was positioned slightly too high, creating a silhouette that would be visible to trained observers. His camouflage was adequate but not perfect, with small gaps that would allow sunlight to reflect off his scope under certain conditions. Most importantly, Hathcock established what appeared to be a predictable routine. Each morning, he would move into position at approximately the same time, following a route that could be observed from several different vantage points. He would spend the day conducting obvious surveillance of the valley, making no attempt to conceal his activities from potential enemy observation. Then he would withdraw along the same route each evening, creating the impression of an American sniper who had become complacent about his own security. The deception required Hathcock to suppress every instinct that had kept him alive during months of combat operations. His natural tendency was to vary his routes, change his timing, and maintain absolute concealment at all times. Now he was deliberately violating these principles, creating patterns that any competent enemy marksman could exploit. The psychological stress was unlike anything he had experienced during conventional synception. Hathcock detected Thaper operations, 3 days into the first signs that Apache was taking the bait. Subtle changes in the behavior of local wildlife suggested the presence of human observers in areas where American patrols had reported no enemy activity. Birds would stop singing in specific locations at predictable times, indicating someone was moving through their territory. Monkeys would become agitated and vocal when certain areas were disturbed by human passage. These natural alarm systems provided Apache with early warning of American patrol movements, but they also revealed her own presence to anyone skilled enough to interpret the signs. On the fourth day, Hathcock found what he had been looking for: fresh footprints in mud beside a stream that flowed through the valley floor. The prints were small, consistent with Apache's reported physical description, and they showed the distinctive wear pattern of Ho Chi Minh sandals that were standard equipment for North Vietnamese forces. More significantly, the direction of travel indicated that Apache was moving toward positions that would offer clear lines of sight to Hathcock's bait location. The footprints revealed something else that intelligence reports had failed to capture. Apache wasn't operating alone. A second set of prints, larger and showing the tread pattern of military boots, indicated the presence of a spotter or security element. This discovery fundamentally altered the tactical situation. Hathcock wasn't facing a lone sniper who relied on individual skill and stealth. He was facing a sniper team with dedicated support personnel who could provide security, intelligence, and backup firepower during critical operations. The implications were sobering. Apache's spotter would be positioned to observe approaches to her firing position, providing early warning of American forces attempting to flank or encircle her location. The spotter would also be equipped with communications equipment that could summon additional support if the tactical situation required it. Most dangerously, the spotter could serve as a backup marksman if Apache were killed or wounded during the engagement. Hathcock's tactical plan required immediate revision. Instead of a simple duel between opposing snipers, he was now facing a coordinated enemy team that possessed numerical superiority and intimate knowledge of the local terrain. The odds had shifted dramatically in Apache's favor, but Hathcock recognized that this development also created new opportunities for exploitation. The presence of a spotter meant that Apache was following established sniper doctrine that emphasized security and mutual support. This suggested that she would approach the engagement methodically, taking time to establish proper communication and coordination with her support element. The deliberate pace of her operations would provide Hathcock with additional time to identify her position and prepare his own tactical response. More importantly, the spotter represented a potential vulnerability that could be exploited. If Hathcock could identify and eliminate the support element first, Apache would be forced to operate alone, significantly reducing her tactical options. The psychological impact of losing her spotter would also create pressure for Apache to either abort the mission or rush her shot, either of which would work to Hathcock's advantage. The hunt entered its most dangerous phase as both sniper teams maneuvered for optimal positioning. Hathcock continued his deception, maintaining the appearance of routine surveillance operations while secretly conducting detailed reconnaissance of his surrounding area. Every shadow, every fold in the terrain, every possible concealment position was catalogued and analysed for its potential to hide enemy marksmen. The breakthrough came on the 6th day when Hathcock detected the glint of sunlight reflecting off glass from a position approximately 800 yards southeast of his bait location. The reflection lasted only a fraction of a second, but it was sufficient to provide a general bearing to Apache's position. She had made the same mistake that had cost the Cobra his life, allowing her optics to catch the light and reveal her presence to a trained observer. But this time, Hathcock didn't have a clear shot. Apache had positioned herself behind a natural rock formation that provided excellent concealment while offering multiple escape routes. The angle of her position relative to Hathcock's location meant that any shot he attempted would have to pass through dense vegetation that could deflect his bullet or reveal his muzzle flash to enemy observers. The tactical problem required a solution that went beyond conventional marksmanship. Hathcock needed to force Apache to expose herself without revealing his own position or alerting her spotter to his presence. The answer came in the form of another deception, but this one carried risks that bordered on suicidal. Hathcock created what appeared to be a second sniper position approximately 50 yards from his actual location. Using spare equipment and careful arrangement of vegetation, he constructed a decoy that would draw enemy fire while revealing Apache's exact position through her muzzle flash. The decoy was sophisticated enough to fool casual observation, complete with the outline of a prone figure and the glint of what appeared to be a rifle scope. The plan required Hathcock to remain motionless in his actual position while Apache engaged what she believed to be his location. If the deception failed, if Apache recognized the decoy for what it was, she would immediately shift her attention to finding his real position. At that range, with her demonstrated skills, she would have several seconds to identify and engage him before he could respond effectively. The waiting began at dawn on the 7th day. Hathcock had positioned himself to observe both Apache's suspected location and his decoy position, ready to engage the moment she revealed herself by firing at the false target. The psychological pressure was immense. Every minute that passed without contact increased the possibility that Apache had detected his deception and was maneuvering to a position where she could eliminate him with a shot he would never see coming. The tension was broken by a sound that every combat veteran learns to recognize instantly: the sharp crack of a high-powered rifle firing at close range. Apache had taken the bait, sending a bullet through the center of Hathcock's decoy position with precision that would have been instantly fatal if he had actually been there. The muzzle flash from her rifle revealed her exact location for the split second necessary for Hathcock to acquire his target and return fire. The shot that followed represented the culmination of everything Hathcock had learned about marksmanship, ballistics, and combat psychology during his months in Vietnam. The bullet had to travel 800 yards through humid air, past vegetation that could alter its trajectory, to strike a target that was visible for only a fraction of a second. The margin for error was measured in inches across a distance where most marksmen would consider themselves fortunate to hit a man-sized target at all. Hathcock's bullet found its mark with the kind of precision that separates legendary snipers from merely competent ones. Apache died instantly, her own rifle unfired except for the single shot that had revealed her position. The psychological warfare, the intelligence gathering, the systematic terrorization of American forces, all of it ended in the space between one heartbeat and the next. But the engagement wasn't over. Apache's spotter, positioned approximately 100 yards from her location, immediately began engaging Hathcock's position with automatic rifle fire. The enemy soldier had correctly identified the source of the shot that killed Apache and was attempting to suppress or eliminate the American sniper before he could escape the area. The firefight that followed was brief, but intense. Hathcock found himself pinned down by accurate enemy fire while trying to identify the spotter's exact location. The enemy soldier was well trained and disciplined, firing controlled bursts that forced Hathcock to remain in concealment while conserving ammunition for the moment when a clear shot presented itself. The tactical advantage shifted when Hathcock realized that the spotter was following a predictable pattern of fire and movement. The enemy soldier would fire several rounds from one position, then move to a new location approximately 20 yards away, then repeat the process. This movement pattern was textbook infantry tactics, designed to prevent return fire while maintaining pressure on the target. Hathcock used his understanding of the spotter's methodology to predict where the next firing position would be established. When the enemy soldier moved to what Hathcock had identified as the most likely location, he was ready with a shot that ended the engagement permanently. The spotter died without ever seeing the American marksman who had eliminated both him and Apache in the space of less than 10 minutes. The aftermath of the engagement revealed the full scope of Apache's operation and the threat she had represented to American forces throughout Vietnam. Her equipment included not just the expected Dragunov sniper rifle, but also sophisticated communications gear, detailed maps of American positions, and intelligence documents that contained information about specific American personnel that could only have been obtained through extensive surveillance operations. Most disturbing were the personal items that Apache carried, photographs of American soldiers taken with telephoto lenses from concealed positions, copies of intercepted mail that contained intimate details about the soldiers' families and personal lives, even audio recordings of American radio communications that had been captured and analyzed for intelligence purposes. Apache hadn't just been hunting American personnel. She had been studying them, learning everything possible about their habits, fears, and vulnerabilities before selecting them for elimination. The intelligence windfall from Apache's death provided American forces with their first comprehensive understanding of enemy counter-sniper operations in Vietnam. The documents revealed a sophisticated network of marksmen, spotters, intelligence collectors, and support personnel that had been specifically organized to eliminate American snipers and demoralize American forces through precision psychological warfare. But perhaps most significantly, the engagement demonstrated that even the most skilled enemy marksman could be defeated through superior tactics and psychological understanding. Hathcock had succeeded not just because of his marksmanship skills, but because he had understood Apache's methodology well enough to turn her own strengths against her. The hunter had become the hunted, and the psychological warfare had been reversed. The elimination of Apache marked a turning point in the psychological warfare that had been escalating throughout the Vietnam conflict. Word of her death spread through North Vietnamese communication networks with the speed of jungle fire, carrying implications that extended far beyond the tactical victory itself. For months, Apache had represented something more than just another enemy sniper. She had become a symbol of indigenous resistance, proof that American technological superiority could be neutralized by individual skill and determination. Her death shattered that symbolic power in ways that conventional military victories never could. The carefully constructed mythology that surrounded Apache's operations had portrayed her as untouchable, a ghost who could strike without warning and disappear without trace. When that mythology crumbled under the reality of superior American marksmanship, it created a psychological vacuum that enemy forces struggled to fill. Intelligence intercepts in the weeks following the engagement revealed the extent of Apache's influence on enemy morale. North Vietnamese units that had operated with confidence in areas under her protection began exhibiting signs of heightened caution that bordered on paranoia. Supply convoys altered their routes to avoid areas where American snipers might be operating. Officers removed their rank insignia, and adopted the movement patterns of enlisted personnel. Most significantly, several enemy sniper teams were reported to have abandoned their positions and withdrawn to areas considered safer from American counter-sniper operations. But the elimination of Apache also revealed the true scope of the threat that enemy marksmen represented to American operations in Vietnam. The intelligence materials recovered from her position provided the first comprehensive picture of a coordinated campaign that went far beyond individual sniper operations. Enemy forces had developed systematic methods for identifying, tracking, and eliminating American personnel through precision marksmanship combined with sophisticated psychological warfare. The bamboo markers that Apache had left beside her victims weren't random taunts. They were part of a deliberate strategy designed to create fear and uncertainty among American forces that extended far beyond the immediate tactical impact of individual casualties. Every soldier who discovered one of these markers understood that enemy forces possessed intelligence about American personnel that seemed impossible to obtain through conventional reconnaissance. The revelation that enemy forces were systematically intercepting and analyzing American mail created security concerns that rippled through the entire command structure in Vietnam. Personal correspondence between soldiers and their families contained information that could be used to create detailed psychological profiles of potential targets. Names of girlfriends and wives could be used to personalize psychological warfare. Details about hometowns and family members could be incorporated into propaganda designed to undermine morale. Military postal services implemented new security procedures designed to prevent enemy access to American mail. Letters were screened for sensitive information before being transmitted to the United States. Soldiers received briefings about operational security that extended to their personal correspondence. Most significantly, new protocols were established for handling mail that might have been compromised by enemy intelligence operations. The broader implications of Apache's intelligence gathering methods forced American commanders to reconsider fundamental assumptions about battlefield security. If enemy forces could obtain detailed personal information about American soldiers through mail interception, what other intelligence sources might they be exploiting? The paranoia that had previously affected individual units began to spread through the command structure itself. Counterintelligence investigations revealed that enemy forces had developed remarkably sophisticated methods for gathering intelligence about American operations. Local Vietnamese civilians who appeared to be friendly to American forces were actually reporting detailed information about unit movements, personnel changes, and tactical procedures. Market vendors who sold goods to American soldiers were collecting information about unit morale, supply status, and future operations. Even children who seemed to be playing near American installations were actually conducting systematic surveillance of defensive positions and guard procedures. Carlos Hathcock returned to the United States in 1969, his tour of duty complete and his legend already growing in the jungles he left behind. With 93 confirmed kills and countless more unconfirmed, he had proven that in an age of technological warfare, the human element remained the most decisive factor on any battlefield. The sniper they couldn't find had become the sniper they could never forget. A ghost who walked among the living and reminded everyone that some battles are won not with superior firepower, but with superior will. His white feather had become a symbol that transcended war itself, representing the eternal truth that in the darkest places, when everything seems lost, there are still those willing to stand watch in the shadows and hold the line against whatever emerges from the darkness.